Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday, November 30th, 2023 meeting of the KubeStellar Community. Welcome, everybody. Let's go ahead and share out the agenda here locally. I'm just going to get my Safari going. Okay, and bookmarks. Okay. All right, so here we are. If you're looking to get an invite to this series, please go ahead to go up to our Google group at kubestellar.io/join_us, or join us without the underscore. You'll be redirected to the same spot. Click on the join and you'll be given access to this document, as well as you'll get regular recurring meeting invites. And so this is one of those regularly recurring meeting invites. You also get access to other things in our Google Drive. And there's other information at the top of this file that you might find useful to help you contribute. All members are, welcome to suggest discussion topics. Please put them down at the bottom inside the current meeting item, which is today, November 30th. And before we get started, though, we abide by a contributor code of conduct. I'll read it real quick here. As contributors and maintainers in the CNCF community, and in the interest of fostering an open and welcoming community, we pledge to respect all people who contribute through reporting issues, posting feature requests, updating documentation, submitting pull requests or patches, and other activities. We are committed to making participation in the CNCF community a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of level of experience, gender identity, and expression. Sexual orientation, disability, personal appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, or nationality. Basically, what all that says, hey, let's just all be nice to each other, please. Thank you. All right, the meeting is being recorded. If you want to be on video, thank you very much. If you don't, please shut it off. If you would like to leave the meeting now because it's being recorded, understand and respect that. Thank you very much. All these meetings are hosted on kubestellar.io/TV. That's our YouTube channel. Please go up there if you'd like to see a recap or a replay. I generally post the notes there, end the meeting about an hour or two after its conclusion. Okay, today's agenda. Let's see if we've got people here that want to talk to this. So, all right, we've done a lot of work on decoupling of KCP. We're getting fairly close, I think, to a point where we'll all be able to experiment and play with the new enhancements and changes that the team that's working on this have submitted. A couple PRs merged last night. One is 1265. Thank you very much for all that contributed to that. That was a major effort. And also 1251, which is the Space Framework's README, which has a lot of important information about how the Space Framework works. I encourage you all to go up there and take a look at it. I think there's two major items that remain in place. Issue number 1266 is where you would go to find any of the information regarding the tracking of that progress of that specific effort. And I encourage you all to go up there and take a look at it. We're charging headlong towards about another week of intense work. I believe probably by the end of next week or the beginning of the following week on the 11th, we should conclude most of the activities around the Space Framework and its incorporation into KubeStellar. So it'll be an exciting time for us, and just in time for the CNCF to vote on our viability as a CNCF sandbox project. So fingers crossed. Thank you all for your work this year. It's been fantastic. We've all rowed in the same direction. I think we deserve a seat at the table. I'd like to be so bold as to say that, but I'll let you decide. Let's talk a little bit more about Kube-bind real quick. Jun, can you give us an update as to how things have been progressing with Kube-bind, and how much more do you think you have in store in terms of work to be done there?
So as you just introduced, we finally got Kube-bind incorporated into KubeStellar, meaning that we are using Kube-bind to export and import APIs from ESWeb to all the other spaces. I guess that's the current status. We have some leftovers. For example, we should be making the script we're using to be idempotent. And that is a required item, but we don't want to block others, don't want to block colleagues' work, so we postpone that. That is another thing to do in the next step.
Okay. Any questions for June? Okay. Thank you, June, for the update, and thank you for all your contribution and hard work. Really appreciate the late nights and all that you've put in.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I'd like to thank the Haifa team led by Ezra and also Mike, who did a lot of suggestions, comments to help us improve.
Yes, Mike, thank you very much for all that you've done in terms of showing others the way and how to improve their work. I think you've done a fantastic job mentoring most, if not all of us this year. And I'd really like to thank you for that.
You're welcome. And again, thank you also to the Haifa people and Jun.
Fantastic. And Mike, I've noticed also that you've kind of capped yourself recently into the 1 a.m. time frame. I think you're getting more rest.
Slightly, yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. Good. Everybody's got to have limitations. I love it. Okay. All right, let's get a quick update on containerization from Franco and Kevin. So Franco, I think you've been doing some more dabbling, and Kevin, I know that you've had some other discussions and issues. Can you both give us some update? Let's start with Franco.
Sure. So to reintroduce the issue a little bit, right? Our current version of KubeStellar relies on KCP as a space provider, specifically 0.11. We are maintaining the state of KCP, but we are having an issue that when the KCP pod restarts, we invalidate the existing kube config, and we need to retrieve a new one. So that's a little bit bothersome. As a solution of it, we have been investigating moving completely to KCP on Helm chart for the deployment. We have demonstrated that the latest chart 0.4.0 deploying KCP 0.21 indeed does not suffer of the problem listed previously. That is a good news for when we will have the space provider manager ready, because at that point we will be able to completely move to the latest version of KCP as an option of a space provider. However, it doesn't fully solve the immediate issue with the current version of KubeStellar. So we have identified several flags that seem to achieve the solution that we need. The flags are not very well documented, and when we apply those flags to KCP 0.11, do not seem to work correctly. So we have been still unsuccessful on getting 0.11 deploy in a resilient way that does not need to recreate the kubeconfig yet, right? But it's a good news for the future, because when we move to the space provider, then we will have a solution that doesn't suffer of this issue.
Okay.
I hope it was clear enough.
Yeah, I have to admit, Franco has been doing the lion's share of this work. I have been doing something far smaller, which was battling with a pair of Raspberry Pis, but I can actually run KubeStellar and Core and Sinker on a pair of Raspberry Pis. So it will work on limited resource devices, which is actually a useful demonstration. But it has been its own particular form of torment to configure the Raspberry Pis to make it work.
Okay. Okay, restarting.
So what I'm going to try to do is some of the discussion for this has been in Slack. So I'm going to try to move some of the findings and summary into the issue, so at least we have a track of it.
Okay, good. I and yes. And waiting. on SF availability. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks, folks, for the update. All right. Let's see. What do we got here? I don't remember what this was. This is 1091. Okay, this did merge. This is for reported state. Okay, and I don't think we didn't test yet. So we're going to have to do that in probably, this is diverted. So I guess we're to be tested. Not, isn't it 0.9? I guess we'll leave it in 14. TBD. We don't have any update on that. Okay. Okay, so we know Argo CD Part 2. So we know that we've made some inroads there and suggestions. We've got some information about how it would be best to work with both Argo CD and Flux CD through the use of automatic labeling in annotations via the default when you're deploying or configuring an application or an application set in something like Argo CD, you can give it direction to automatically label the outputted resources, those that are being placed. And so that is one of the recommended ways that will interoperate with Argo CD seamlessly between KubeStellar's edge placement and Argo CD's output of resources. I think something very similar is available in Flex CD, although I don't have much experience with it. So we haven't done anything more with Argo CD this year. So I hope that we can revisit that topic with them in the beginning of 2024. We did have some initial discussions with the Flux CD community. And why don't you fill us in on that, Jun?
Yeah, those guys in the Flux community ask questions mainly regarding what KubeStellar can help to solve Flux City's problems. I asked them for an example. They talked about the complexity of repo structure, the Git repo structure, when it comes into the multi-cluster use cases when people are using Flux. They are talking about this in the meeting, but I don't think merely talking about that is sufficient. So I asked for a pointer of documentation, or even if any messages in Slack channel that would be helpful for me to understand the problem before I can really try to solve the problem using KubeStellar. But they didn't give me any pointers of that. I'm going to do some following up, maybe just today or tomorrow, to ask whether they can elaborate on what exactly the problem is before I can try to solve it using KubeStellar.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Jun, for pursuing that. I think one of the things that we could probably work on in the near term is the potential for a document that can serve on our partnership site. So I think you're familiar with that. So I think we put this together at one time. So this is how to deploy with Argo CD and use the edge placement. The potential is here to take another turn at this and add what it takes to configure Argo CD to automatically attach labels. So this is something that maybe if you get bored at some point, it might be useful to update, add a child page, or in some way change this so that it reflects how we might interact with Argo CD deploying resources with default labels that would then match edge placements, which also match those labels, and therefore not having to enumerate each one of the individual resources in an edge placement.
Oh,
So
okay.
something we might want to consider doing that for both Argo and Flux. So something to consider if you're looking for something to work on. Community would enjoy your contribution.
Okay.
All right. Okay, just flipping back over. Okay, let me note that in there here. Potential New contribution to the KubeStellar.io partner community / partner site, where we could show how to configure Argo, CD and Flux CD to automatically label resources before as on deployment, and then match a statically configured edge placement object that includes the same label. Okay, so that would be cool for both of those. So something to work on. All right, let's see, let's move on. So any updates on KubeCon North America and EU? We submitted an updated talk title and abstract, sorry, abstract to the EU Paris folks, and I think this will be largely based upon AI/ML inferencing and data preprocessing, and using the multi-cloud computer stack, which includes Open Data Hub, Kubeflow pipelines, Codeflare SDK, MCAD, multi-cluster application dispatcher, and KubeStellar, as well as trimmings from Loki, Thanos, Prometheus, Grafana. And so the idea here is to have a talk in Paris where we discuss how this stack can help people solve their hot use case today, which is AI inferencing and AI data preprocessing. And so we hope that that's accepted. Hint, hint. Anybody out there listening, we'd love for you to accept our talk. I think it's largely in line with the track that we'll be discussing AI/ML interesting topics, and so we've submitted it to that track for its consideration. There's also poster sessions that are available, will be available there on site. There is a partner exhibit, I guess you could call it. Yeah, partner exhibit that was on the show floor. It's about 40 or 50 small booths. They're double-sided, so you can get a few partners in there. And each one of those booths then runs for a period of like 2 to 3 hours, and then they rotate it with another 40 or 50 vendors. So they get quite, good coverage for the amount of space that's devoted to it. I guess they believe at this point they can extend that for folks that want to do research based exploration and solutions. And those will be available in Paris, KubeCon EU, for the very first time. And I'm pleased to announce that Braulio Dumba has gone ahead and submitted a talk on behalf of a Cornell University's software-defined farming initiative with Gloria Mbumbiza, who's a Cornell PhD student, graduate student. And the hope is that we get accepted there and then can promote that work. Should be fairly interesting. It does leverage KubeStellar at its core, along with other IoT edge devices that measure everything from plant health to nitrate discharge in water as runoff from fertilizer, as well as taking in and ingesting large models from NASA for the ability to infer where pestilence and drought exist. And this all goes towards the equitable distribution of food and food security. And this is a government project which gives grants to individual universities, and Cornell just so happens to have a large investment in the local apple farming efforts in New York State, as well as the wine country in California. And so they're using those as test beds for any number of different IoT edge devices. They also have cattle farms as well that they're investigating. So this is pretty cool work, very wide ranging, and it shows the adaptability of KubeStellar. So we hope to have that session accepted. Bradley, I totally stole your thunder on all of that. You want to add any details there?
No, this is great. You had the comment. So just a comment. So in this work, so we are planning to work with a lot of edge devices. Shutter has verified. So Kevin, I'll follow up. Yeah, with you. So based on your experience now with KubeStellar and Raspberry Pi, so it'll be very useful. Yeah, to get some insights and help from you as well.
Very, very, very cool. So from the outer reaches of space, Kevin, we have to ground you and get you on terra firma. You'll be working in the soil. All right, Kevin. Thank you for your. All right, thank you for considering that. Okay, so we've got a couple of outstanding API changes. I think they are still in progress. Nope, this one merged. All right, COD as a default resource name. So this one's merged. So I'm going to pull this one out. This is merged. And I think 909 is still outstanding. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right, Mike, do you want to give us any update on 909? I know that not much has changed, but any new thinking there?
It has a beneficial intersection with the work on pluggable transport. I think that rather than have one big object with two big lists, we should have a collection of limited size slices, and this introduces the other kind of limited size slice. So I think it's a good idea. We've been focusing on the KCP decoupling, which is, I think, why there hasn't been movement on this.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's put this over with pluggable transport work. Here is focused on. Okay. All right. Let's see. Plug in. Okay, pluggable train. Okay, good. It's down there. So let me move that up real quick. Even though he's not on the call, I'll go ahead and I'll give small update. Not much has transpired in the way of merged activity, but there is a lot of quoting activity and a discussion about design elements that is taking place, testing, proof of concept, and so forth. There's an introduction, as Mike alluded to an intermediate step between what the placement translator produces and what the mailboxes consume. And that's as far as I'll go in terms of describing it, because I think outside of that, we're still investigating. The idea here is the pluggable transport would allow the use and leveraging of not only the KubeStellar syncer as a means of synchronizing target states from workload description spaces that we have inside core KubeStellar, but we could also use OCM and ACM's clusterlet as another means of synchronizing resources to targets, as well as any other synchronization utility, like those from other vendors like Rancher's Fleet or other synchronization techniques. So keep an eye out for this. This might be something useful. I had just given thought to the possibility that Argo uses and Flux use an agent for synchronization. So maybe in the future there might be some overlap there, the ability to integrate directly with them instead of having them use their own tool to use their syncer. We would incorporate them into ours. Who knows? Things are possible. All right, one can wish. All right, anything anybody would like to add to the pluggable transport discussion? Okay. All right, Mike, anything you want to add here on versioning? I know we haven't done anything new on this. We can skip it if you want, or we can talk about it.
Yeah, no news there.
Okay, we'll move on. All right, Braulio, you're up next, issue 1009. It seems like such a long ago issue here. Any news on testing, stress testing? I know we've done some SOAK testing for multi-cloud computer. Anything new here?
Yes. So I have been experimenting with Cluster Loader to the tool for us to use to generate to create the draft to stress test KubeStellar and some components of the MCC stack. As a workload, we are planning us to use apparatus encapsulating Effi pipelines. And I have done the initial test. I have we can now do. I have started testing in our in some of our OpenShift cluster using apparatus. So using cluster loader to generate that traffics. Yeah, just using some samples apparatus. And as well, so one of the issues that was having on the initial testing was that the cluster loader as soon as you can configure to say how many objects you want to deploy, and also the functional distribution to create the workload. For example, you can use like a step function or use a sequential function. But as soon as the objects are created, so the cluster loader that deletes the namespace that hosts in the experimental objects, and because we want to run our experiment for a longer period, maybe a couple of hours to a few days, that was not suitable for our use case. I did a little bit more investigation to cluster loader, and now I was able to put a timer on the configuration, so that we can exactly configure how long do we want for this object to exist on the cluster before the experiment terminates and clean up. So now that's great. That's why I tested now OpenShift cluster, so everything is working fine. So now that we know how to deploy the workloads, I have been discussing with some of our colleagues about how to using the observability tools that are already in our clusters for us to collect metrics of the pods that we want to investigate in our experiment, and we are going to be focused on using observing the behavior of KubeStellar, the sinkers, and also a couple of other pods from our MCC stack environment.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Braulio on stress testing? Okay. All right. So if you want to, Braulio, if you want to add any information directly here so that I don't have to type it in, that would be great.
Yes, I'll do so. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. Let's see. So an update on some of the kubectl plugin replacements. So we were using bash script for the majority of all of our kubectl plugins for KubeStellar, and we've gone ahead and converted most of that, or a good number of those, maybe half, to use Go client, and those are out there and awaiting review. We're waiting for the space framework decoupling of KCP to merge in full, which should take place in the next week or two. And once that's completed, I think in the new year, we'll be able to tackle and address this specific PR. So more news to come on that. But that helps us with the maturity of the project, I believe, and it also helps us, create a basis for other potential plugins or switches in that plugin that can do other things. And stay tuned for what that might look like. All right, real quick, an update on the multi-cloud computer. So we've continued to do work, as I previously mentioned, in the EU Paris RFP submission discussion just a little earlier in this call. And we've submitted a talk for that, as well as we continue to work on deploying, configuring, and validating our individual environments. Right now, we have about 5 environments 4 of them internally on IBM Cloud, 1 on AWS. And we continue to determine, what are the next steps for us to do to enhance this work. I think there's a general use of this type of multi-cloud computer, not just for AI inferencing and data preprocessing, but for other workloads as well. So we're gearing up and starting to talk internally a little bit more in the community, I should say, a little bit more about what other application this combination of stack elements might have in the future. So that's it for that. Anything you want to add there, Braulio, in terms of that item?
No, that's it. No, thank you.
Okay. All right. So we're getting towards the end of the year here. The end of Sprint 6 is on December 1st, or the beginning of Sprint 7 is December 1st. So we'll be moving and evacuating Sprint 6 and moving into Sprint 7 in the next 24 hours. And that looks like this. So I believe it's Sprint 6, and we're starting to move things into Sprint 7. Majority of the focus in Sprint 7, you'll see a lot more activity on the pluggable transport. Of course, we still are headlong on the effort in multi-cloud computer. We hope to see this KCP decoupling reduce in terms of the size of the queue and the backlog. And then we can get back on to some other things. I think there's a discussion about the validity and use of Kube-bind, which is in the forefront of all of our minds. I'm not really certain at this point if we should continue to use it. We did use Kube-bind as a band-aid over the API export and binding work that we had included in our original form of our project, where we used KCP exclusively. And now that we've moved on to Space Framework, Kube-bind is satisfying a lot of that functionality in API export and binding. However, there's been a lot of gaps that had to be filled. It took a lot of work and effort, and we're thankful for that. And in the months ahead, we look to evaluate the value that Kube-bind provided and determine if we should continue to contribute back to that project as an upstream effort, or if it's something that we want to take into consideration. There may not even be a necessity for it. So that I'll be opening a ticket for a post-mortem on Kube-bind just after the conclusion of this call, to discuss what are the potential, what did we have to take into consideration, what are the gaps that still remain, and use that as information for the discussion as to what are the next steps and what does the future hold for KubeStellar and the use of Kube-bind, if any at all. So that's what you'll see in the months ahead. I think the work that we've done with the Space Framework will allow us to have a lot of lateral flexibility in terms of who we use for our underlying logical cluster provider, which I think is a great step in the right direction for insulating and providing us some security when it comes to, and give people the option to choose which logical cluster provider they would like to use for their implementation of KubeStellar. So it'll give people, the ability to use something as small and flexible as Kind. Maybe people have been using KCP and would like to continue using it. And there's also a new entry on the forefront with KubeFlex. And so we're waiting, and we're excited to have people start to use that logical cluster provider and find new and interesting ways of using it within and without KubeStellar. So that's an interesting aspect of the project. The pluggable transport layer also gives us flexibility to allow us to leverage existing synchronization techniques that are out there, technologies such as those from the OCM upstream, our partners in Red Hat with ACM, as well as folks in places like Rancher. So there's all kinds of opportunities coming up in the future for integration and interesting use cases. We'll be exploring those more in 2024. And I think I wanted to give Paolo a couple of minutes here. If you have anything you'd like to mention about KubeFlex and any of the new developments there, our sister project.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. So the latest work has been more, has been more in the space of adding some more features to KubeFlex. in particular, I'm looking into this. Actually, I've opened an issue for a new feature that I found that in some use case can be useful. For example, I've heard that even in the case of, for example, running Kube-bind connector, some automatically, once we create a space, this can be useful, but also have other use cases in mind, like running Helm charts or other things like that. So the idea is you can create a control plane using the kubeflex machinery. Essentially, there is a controller there that will take care of initializing namespace, API server, running the namespace, and some basic controllers. But you could also have to run your own controllers against that particular control plane. And so the idea is to somehow make that process simpler. Maybe another use case is maybe to install CRDs in that control plane as soon as it's come up. For example, you may want to have a space that has a OpenShift flavor, for example. So you may want to have there some of the CRDs like routes, other things that we want to have there. And so the idea is that with this feature, you can define this so-called control plane hook, where you define some action to be taken. Essentially, you define Kubernetes templates to be applied once the control plane is up. For example, the typical use I'm testing now is to run a Helm chart against that API server or space as soon as it comes up, right? For example, that Helm chart can contain CRDs or can contain some other things you want to apply there. Or the other use case is to just start maybe a controller that will point to that API server. That is an additional controller. It can be, for example, the connector in Kube-bind. There could be other use cases, but so far these are some of those that I'm considering. So hopefully this is something, I'm right now in the process of testing. Hopefully next week I'm going to have a new release, probably release 0.30 that will include this feature and some documentation how to use it.
Okay. Any questions for Paulo? Thanks, Paulo.
You're welcome.
All right. Sorry, I caught you off guard without water.
Yeah, sorry, I little sore throat today.
Oh, I apologize. Okay.
No
All
problem.
right. Okay. Let's see. I think we're at 2/3 of the hour. So is there anybody out there that has any items they'd like to discuss in the open forum here in the community? Okay. All right. Okay, folks. So here's what the remainder of the year looks like. I think I'm just looking back real quick at the issue list. I think we have our next community meeting. Yeah, our next community meeting is on December 14th. And let's have a show of hands. I don't think I've seen other communities already dismiss this, but I want to make sure that we're okay with it here. Is there anybody out there, by show of hands, that would like to have a community meeting on December 28th? That is not the next scheduled, but the last scheduled for this year. Okay, going once, going twice, ratified. Okay, folks. So I'll go ahead and I'll cancel the meeting for December 28th. That'll be new to me because we haven't canceled one yet. I don't even know how to do that, so I'll figure it out. Our last meeting for the year will be December 14th, and we'll resume again in January when the meeting invite gets generated. Okay, folks. Any other comments or questions before we close the call? All right, fantastic. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. Have a fantastic rest of the month. There's not much left. And if you're not planning on joining for the remainder of the year, thank you all for your contributions, and have a happy and safe set of holidays. And we'll see you again in January if you don't choose to attend in December. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.